Good evening, everybody. I hope everybody's doing reasonably well. And I'm looking forward to the seminar on the weekend. I have a few questions. Please remember, we can always use more questions. We run out seemingly very, very fast. This one's from Carol Corbet. Would there be some point where you would not get help from consciousness? It's an interesting, actually, really kind of an interesting question. In a kind of a way, probably have to go into this from a particular perspective. One of the first things I think is that we have that, consider the possibility that we have an internal flow all the time. You've heard me talk about this one before, whereas we come into this life literally engaged with a higher state, and a higher state energy or flow or consciousness. And we begin to utilize this interaction or interactivity for a purpose that relates directly to making sense of our world. So we construct a form. This form is constructed by all kinds of relationship functions, basically our interactions with what we see, what we experience, what we copy from other people, as I've said many times. And at the same time, we're building kind of a very firm way of seeing how the world is from our perspective. That perspective begins to be very firmly affixed. And in that kind of fixity that occurs, we have a version of what we believe things are. Right, wrong, good, bad, whatever we come up with. How we settle within ourselves as a form is protected by us. Understandably, still using that flow or intensity, one could say. These are words, and you can see how difficult things are in relationship to using words. We try to explain something with words because that's the language that we have that enables us to communicate with other people. Basically helps us to communicate with ourselves, try to make sense of things if we're allowed to think deeply. I mean, if we allow ourselves to think deeply rather than just holding ourselves in a position and then protecting the position that we have. And by the way, that is normally how we function. We're very territorial, just like animals are. We are an animal, obviously. And that territory that we protect is related directly to the personalization that has been constructed within us for a purpose that allows us to seek some relative form of comfort internally. That's not negation. That's, as a matter of fact, something that is very important to each and every person, as well as it's important to families and family backgrounds or nations. They construct stories, versions of how this form is better than that form. Our nation is better than this. Oh, this version of our nation is better than that. Oh, no. Well, not that version, this version. this kind of thing. And then you have clumps, no offense to anybody, of people who have different ways of seeing things. Each one of our personalities is a way of seeing things. We have a versioning of options, a way to read those options and construct those options for purposes that relate directly to being valued somehow, some way, either by others or yourself. This you all know. So here you go. The question is, would there be some point where you would not get help from consciousness? It's kind of a slippery slope there. I could say no, I could say yes. Both versions are related directly to us overriding what help could be offered, because our love and our great need to do maintenance and protection on how we function as a form, a shape, a reflexive maze of what we would call individually natural responses under a set of circumstances. We don't easily get to the point where we can allow ourselves to take a step back from us to see us operational as a form, engaging relative to what we've already considered the only way to engage. It's very difficult for us. Higher state can recognize that. Our dilemma is learning how to perceive that lies within the image construction, and then quite necessary way of moving from one cultivation of an image to another so that we can learn and understand that we are images of relative value. And relative means relative to ourselves. We value ourselves as we see ourselves. And that is an important feature that enables us to comfort this zone of personality engagement that we have within life. So our youthfulness as a species allows us to feel comforted and valued. And in 8 billion plus people, there are 8 billion plus ways of engaging in that. So you ask the question, would higher states interfere with that? My suspicion is that our relationship with this is all involved with an act of love. You love the way you function. Fine, that's an act of love. If you shift that, that will be an act of love for the shift that you've already moved from or are attempting to move from. But that previous act of love has trained itself to remain similar to how it was before. Therefore, loving in a kind of a way is battling loving. And that's within us. That's pretty consistent. It's very difficult to change habits that have been kicking around for a long time at any age, especially when they feel very comfortable. Why should you bother? If a higher state interacted with that, it would be to enable that individual to slightly see something out of just a little off somewhere. Off in relationship to something unknown. But that little off, if perceived, is kind of a gap through which an individual could allow itself to consider something just slightly different. But from a higher state's point of view, it would have to be considered by the individual because higher state levels are engaging with love for us, regardless of what it looks like, and within us. So you use that level of loving to impress upon yourself the nature of loving. And it goes unrecognized, unperceived, yet slightly perceived, slightly recognized. For example, if you are upset about something and you're engaged to defend an idea that you have or a way of seeing the world that you have, suddenly you really recognize maybe that you're defending something. Blood pressure increases, your voice gets louder, your complicity with love is causing that. The love of how you believe things are. Not even thinking about it. It's a reflex based on what you're normally used to reflexing about. You have to fit it into a story. The story of how things must be within you so that you will be respected and valued based on something that you've normalized or decided is valuable relative to you. So it is higher states would not want to counteract that until you're able to allow yourself to just understand a little broader. There are seconds and moments when that occurs in everyone's life. Often, by the way. It's subtle. But if you're really interested in recognizing something like that, you'd have to have a conversation with yourself, as all of us would have to have, no exceptions. Then, in fact, you're kind of talking to that higher state almost directly. Whatever your belief is, doesn't matter. Whatever your background is, doesn't matter. You're having that talk with the construction of the form that you lean on to be valued or comforted. Understanding you're doing that with love of that form, of course, but love nonetheless. Subtly, you can be aware that this, you might notice your intensity. Why are you so angry? What are you doing there? You might notice that. Don't tell anybody else. You don't have to do that. If you do that, then you become in love with telling everybody else. It's still constructing form, which, by the way, that is part of the way we grow. we reconstruct for. No disrespect there. It's just what we do. There is a subtlety that can happen if you have that gap. An idea can come into your mind, or an emotion, or a visceral response physically. All three levels of our personality constructs. There can be an instigation of a thought, a reflex, a recognition of something as a subtle helper. Just a little bit of something. And you begin to wonder about that. Now you're opening an inner lens into a different place. Actually, you're wondering if it's okay to wonder about anything about you. No negativity attached. And again, I'll say that negativity only exacerbates the stiffness of that form. It's how it works. Because you're intensifying the need to be vigilant, but never moving from that particular place. Not so easy for us human beings. Later, you begin to understand and recognize that others are doing something similar. Not the same, they have their own versions, but similar. Then you begin to understand something about humanity. You're not recreating something, you're recognizing what's there. And it can bother you a little bit. You can even come up with, let's say, some kind of language that says, what have I contributed physically, emotionally, mentally? How have I contributed today to these so many different levels of intensity? Softness, quiet, gentleness, intensity, anger, frustration, blah, 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 blah. Restriction. It has to be this way, otherwise it's terrible. Yeah, we all contribute to a very large mental, emotional, and very physically oriented formulation of a collective that exists with 8.5 or whatever the number is, billion folks. That has included perhaps smaller numbers, but still building a form on a very large collective level. How can you affect that? Even if it's for 5 minutes. Well, some people say you can meditate. That may be helpful. Quiet down. At least you're doing a part for 20 minutes, a half an hour, 10 minutes, an hour, 3 hours, whatever you do. And then if you take their wonderful credit for doing this, then you're contributing to the version of the great need that everyone has to be recognized and valued by others. In that element, higher states have a harder time penetrating into the construct of enablement, which allows you to actually be the perceiver, like higher states, of something within you. And if you're going to do that, like higher states, there would be no assessment, no judgment, no, just recognition and a deeper understanding that that may be an element of being a human being on these planes, but you can do a part, have a part to play in this by softening down a little bit your current relationship. Now remember, if you do that honestly, you will have a reaction to doing that. It's real because the construct that you've already developed, and remember, it's not a Pavlovian dog we have here. We're a form, and it protects itself. It's its nature. You've trained it to do that and to keep maintaining it. But also, you have the ability to recognize and begin slowly to understand that you can make some adjustments in that. You don't have to keep the same stiff form that you may have had on the inside, and it's working its way out to the outside of your engagement with life. We all have so many fears internally. Fear of not being able, fear of not being, again, recognized as a valuable person, all the rest of it. Natural, normal stuff here. Not something to be poo-pooed or considered of no consequence. That is a good protection, mind you. But the relationship with higher states is beginning to know the difference between you on these planes and you in relationship to that level of loving that you have for you, no matter what it looks like. And that being connected to loving at a higher state. I think that's always difficult to understand by us, and rightly so. I think, relatively speaking, we're fairly young as a species. Oh, being around for probably 250,000 years, that's a popular figure. Plus, it found new digs with new bones that relate to years beyond that. And we don't really have any perfect archaeological history. We're just doing the best we can by digging in the ground to see if we can find out how long we've been here. But no matter how long we've been here, we've been attempting to engage with each other and with our environments, with our parental environment, cultural, whatever that may be. And even if it doesn't sound like a nation, kind of territorial, national boundaries, whatever they may be. One tribe and another within 10-mile area or 10,000s of miles. I think the understanding, the real experiential understanding, experiential recognition of those higher states is quite interesting. Another question has to come to mind. You can begin to be aware of the energy around you, which in part is you. In part, maybe something operating through you, an energy form I love and I talk about from time to time. But at the same time, know the difference between the two. The difference is energy within and around you, you use for you, plus the fact that higher state energy can be in you and around you while you're using it for your purposes. It seems to want us to grow beyond our limited repertoire of seemingly needful ways to engage with life from one day to the next. Seemingly, it wants us to become able to know it and to know that it will not interfere with us because it's trying to help us to perceive us in relationship to how we function, so that we can begin to be like that higher state, watching and learning and engaging beyond our skeletal construct in and off the body. Very interesting question came up. But what about if you just think about something wrong? I agree. If you think of an old friend who lives 10,000, 12,000, 15,000 miles away, are you there? I think you are. There's no way of proving this. It's very subjective, of course, at our level of engagement. If you think of an old friend and they are there, you are there for a second or two, as long as you can hold that thought. You are remembering them. They may even, in a flash, remember you. As those higher states get a little stronger within you, it'll not be only you remembering them and them remembering you. They will be in you. You will sense them, feel them, engage with them, quite physically, quite emotionally, and even quite mentally. You can see how far we need to grow so that we would not inflict, no offense with that, our way of being in them so they would be acting like us if we have a bad day that day. However, if they were able to function at a higher state, they may be able to be helpful just for a few seconds by sending their good wishes in our love, in our direction. Thinking about that, think about that in closer than 10,000 miles. Healing for all of us may be a very valuable thing, helping us within our engagement with life, helping ourselves may be very helpful in a kind of a manner. Even with healing on our planes, our construction, our talking about healing, there's still the element of of control by the self. Someone said the other day, I think I would like to be helpful, healing. And I honestly said, if you could be a healer in a way, letting higher state energy operate through you and you not interfering with it trying to be helpful to people in the way you think that you should be, that would be marvelous. None of us are exempt from our perspective when we're engaging with others. And we like our perspective. We've fallen in love with it. But it's only one. And there are many options in our learning process. Perhaps we can begin to think about that so that we can learn that healing isn't about us. And I'm talking about this in relationship to everybody on the planet, where we figure out what we think would be most important on the planet and try to affect our will towards that direction. We do the best we can, and we will do that willfulness until we begin to learn beyond it. And this is going to be not so simple for us. But understanding slowly, recognizing beyond what we can currently understand is always helpful, growing little by little. And experiencing that flow that can operate in and through us is very valuable. This moves in towards another question. So this one from Joelle and Catherine. Sorry, put my glasses on for this one. Can you talk about the possible interactions between beings that are on different levels of awareness? It's another tricky question because it brings up responses. Within ourselves, that question does, about how we normally function in our world. We need to have little proofs, causation, we call it, logic, kind of sensate orientation, mentally focused. If this happens when that's occurring, therefore it must have happened because of that. We do that so many different ways. Even in magical thinking, we do the same thing. It's allowed because you're still growing through ways of thinking. We all are. Ways of proceeding, engagements with experience after the initial stages of understanding from one perspective, we're moved towards understanding from a different perspective. And then another, and then another, and then another, and then another. We can't do this very well when we're hooked and deeply in love with only one. And I'm talking about opinions here, of course, which is natural in our world. So non-negation here. No negation. Just recognition. No devaluation, kind of. Just understanding. So you have two people. That engage with each other. One from a higher state let's say they know that that might be possible. They have perceived energy moving through them. I'm trying to define it. It's difficult. Operating through them, but let's say they have really no interest in being recognized. Some of the folks that I've been fortunate enough to meet would fit that mold, have no interest at all in being recognized. Because if they are, they're drawn in to that recognition syndrome. If you're recognized, you must be valuable. This one that we have in our world. So an individual that you might meet at that level, would not particularly draw too much attention to herself. And suddenly, energy through one of those chakra centers, Sephira centers, valves, whatever you want to call them, would open in a slightly different way in you than it could before, which means that energy would move into you and try to make a place within you that would move you slightly different, in a different way than what you're normally used to. No attempt would be made on their part personally to personally do this. Although there would be some who are growing who would do that, who would attempt to do that for a particular purpose relative to growing. The person I'm talking about is related deeply to higher states. So they would try and calm themselves down. They may say something like, if this energy can operate through me and be helpful, then please let it be and help me to stay out of it the best I can, because I'm learning more. They might say something like that. If they already have learned that and have that ability to be at that level, they would automatically only be looking for the energy moving through them for the purpose that seemed to be relevant to that other person and their inner development. And they would move on or engage with something else. Your dishwasher is really a good dishwasher. Wow. Is it a Westinghouse? Is it a this and that? Wow. And you look at this person and you think, what are they interested in dishwashers? How is that important to spiritual growth? And why would anybody with that kind of an attitude be called anything other than maybe interested in what, plumbing or changing dishwashers? Woo. So we're easily sidetracked from looking beyond the personality set. Because that personality set has different purposes. But nonetheless, we are tremendously able to come up with value evidence and assessments of almost anything. Anything you can imagine. This is normal for us. This is what we do. Makes us make a mark. That elevates slightly our relationship with ourselves. Makes us feel kind of okay, that's part of the growing process. Such a being at that level that I'm talking about will continue on. And if you're not sold on the idea of them being not so greatly interested in spiritual stuff, but they may even begin to talk about your furniture. Talk about how you need a new lock on the door. Talk about how they like your shoes. Deepen your flavor towards the personalized endowment that you carry with you for the purpose of evaluating the universe. So you don't figure out you're actually getting help from them, through them. Very fascinating. I think everyone out there would find that fascinating. Or just plain junk and nonsense to listen to. That higher state nonsense is real in the world. What I'm wondering is there any possibility that each and every one of us can slowly move into a state relative to that, quietly, without the need to be elevated into a great position of how you can do that so well? It's touchy. Because once you know stuff, or think you do, the experience level isn't necessarily there at all. One thing about that, you can't fool higher states. They're more sensitive. And you're sitting inside of them as you are, with all the chicanery that you might carry for the purpose of helping you to feel comfortable. And not one time are they judging you. They're understanding. They're perceiving. They're relating. Perhaps the other times when, in their growing process, they had some of those things that were similar. So they can understand you better than you think you can. And they don't judge like you do. No need. They understand that you just don't have to be like you anymore. That's a tricky thing. But here's another problem that can happen. As you engage with higher states, you're more susceptible to understanding how another person is because you are acting like that. And you have to allow yourself to slowly begin not to do that. But it's hard to see. And then it's hard to judge. Hard not to judge, sorry. Easy to judge. Go slow with this. This is experiential, actual, real. Because you begin to be real in relationship to that flow that can be as gentle and calming and loving and compassionate and helpful, also in ways that we don't understand, we carry with us internally. We need the help to gain access, not only to those levels, but to the perception needed to recognize those levels within us and just soften and hold them for a second or two longer than we could before. That means then we become more trustworthy within, so we can be more helpful without, just by being and growing as we engage with life. One footstep in front of the other. And recognizing a view back. And still not quite understanding the definitions that occupy higher states related to spiritual growth. There's a potpourri of a whole bunch of stuff that we have come up with. And thankfully we have, even if they're not really exactly true, they help us to get through moments within our own lives, or some experiences, or some judgments, or assessments are there and they're hard to get rid of. And sometimes we don't want to. Because if we do, we are letting go stuff that literally we spent money getting to. Time, study, and years of practice of how to maintain how we were before. No negation is involved with this. It's how we engage with that relationship or movement towards an engagement with higher states. Consciously, with consciousness, learning and becoming more and more accessible to it, and more able to recognize that which lies within at a higher state as well as all the wondrous engagements that we've had in this life, strange as they may have been, and not always perfect, that's for sure, and perhaps other lives that have helped us gain access to levels of consciousness that we could not have engaged in without them, because it helps us to understand people. And we are a people. Without understanding, we're reconstructing again that form which holds us from perceiving an actual engagement with higher states that is already within us. I think there's a couple other questions, but I think what we'll do is meditate now, and we'll try and get some music on. Hopefully it works tonight. And I wish everybody well, and I'll see some of you on the weekend. Take care, everybody. And now we'll just begin to do the balancing and grounding best you can, and have a good evening.